reminder that we record the meeting, we post it on YouTube, all the classes. So if you miss any class, you can go to YouTube and watch it there. We are back to the Spirit's book, and we are on Future Joys and Sorrows, the last chapter of book 4 of the Spirit's book, which is the last chapter of the Spirit's book. We stopped on question 975, so we are going to start on question 976. We're talking about the future joys and sorrows and spirits, struggling spirits compared to happy spirits in the spiritual world. Okay, so Paco, you're going to do the honors.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's my honor. It's 976. It
Can I hear you, Paco?
Okay. You don't hear me?
Yes.
Mute?
Yes. Yeah, I can hear you. Oh, now you're muted. Now you're muted, Paco. Now you're muted.
Can you hear him, João?
No. Paco, we cannot hear you.
Okay. What about now?
Now we can. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay. Is seeing suffering spirits a cause of distress for the good ones? If so, what becomes of the
João, can you hear him?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I can hear him too.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Is seeing suffering spirits a cause of distress for the good ones? If so, what becomes of the happiness of the latter, as that happiness has been impaired? Good spirits are not distressed by the suffering of those who are at a lower point than themselves, because they know that it will one day end. They lend a helping hand to assist those who suffer to become better. This is their occupation and a joy for them when they succeed. This is understandable for spirits who are strangers and who take no special interest in them. However, does observing the pain and suffering disturb the happiness of spirits who have loved then on earth? If spirits do not see your suffering, it is because they separated from you after death. While religion preaches that the souls of the departed continue to see you, but they see you from another point of view. They know that this suffering helps you advance if you bear it with resignation. And they are more pained by the lack of resilience that holds you back by what they know is temporary suffering.
Okay. So basically what Kardec is asking the spirits is, what's the relationship between happier spirits and less evolved spirits in terms of the impressions caused on the happier spirits, on the suffering of the less evolved ones. And what the spirits are saying is that more evolved spirits, they understand better about our eternal journey and the continuous progress that we make. So they are not going to be distressed by the strugglings of those that are evolving, because they know that this is temporary and it will end. Actually, we suffer more with the sufferings of those around us, because we don't have the view from the spiritual world, which is a more ample view. Now, Kardec then goes and, well, but what about those that are close to the ones that are less evolved, that are left behind? And the Spirit says, it depends. If you are separated after death and you are in no condition of helping them, you are probably not going to be close to them. And you remember, I just want to remind you of the book Nosso Lar by André Luiz, right? That
Yes,
if you remember the book, yeah, André Luiz spends the whole book trying to reconnect with the family and not being allowed or recommended, because there is no prohibitions, but they recommend him, and he follows the recommendation of not reaching out for his family that he left behind, and not even to receive news from them. So, because at a certain point in the book, he asks if he could just receive news from them. And later in the book, we understand why. He wasn't prepared at that point to deal with what happened with his family after he left. And even later, when he's much more prepared and if he's finally allowed to be reunited with his family, the first impressions, he almost fails to control his emotions. He had to leave the house when he finds that his former wife had married again and has a new husband, and all traces of his existence were practically erased from his former home. He had to leave, breathe, think about it, reflect, and then he comes back. So when we understand better about our loved ones and their journey, we will suffer less, or we will be more we'll feel for them, but not in the sense of suffering, but in the sense of lamenting their lack of ability to deal with the challenges that they are facing. So it's a different sort of suffering, not the suffering that we understand here, which causes us pain when we see a loved one, especially those close to us, going through hardships, to difficulties. When the spirits see from the spiritual side point of view, they see with a different eyes and with a different understanding. So it doesn't mean that they are not interested. Actually, they are very interested. They are very willing to help and to assist, but they understand they need to respect our free will, and they need to accept our difficulties in overcoming the challenges that are there in front of us. So, and again, there are several different types of spirits in the spiritual world. So we cannot even guarantee that the spirits that we are thinking about, if they are close to us in the spiritual world, they may have been struggling themselves there and not being able to be close to us because of their own inability to deal with their own issues. And again, going back to André Luiz, you may remember his father that was in the lower zones, accompanied by two of his former sisters, and in no condition of being close to him, not listening to him or his mother, and his grandfather later, that even worse, that we mentioned last week, that is obsessed with the fortune that he thinks he has the right to, and doesn't think of anything else. So it depends on the condition that the spirit finds itself in the spiritual world. Spirits that are dear to us and are more evolved than us, or at least are in good conditions of assisting us, will be close to us and will be trying to help us, and will be commemorating our victories and lamenting our struggles, but not in the sense that they are going to be suffering in the sense that we understand here. Okay? Questions? Comments? No? Okay, next one, Paco.
Very good. Epa, you went ahead Or, if spirits are unable to hide their thoughts or all the acts of their lives from each other, does it mean that those who have wronged others are always in the presence of their victims? Common sense tells you that it cannot be otherwise. It's the disclosure of all our reprehensible acts and the perpetual presence of those who have been our victims an atonement for the guilty? Yes, and it is more substantial than you think. It only lasts until they make amends for wrongdoing, either as a spirit or as a person in new physical lives. When we are in the spirit world, our entire past is revealed, and the good or bad that we did is known. Those who have done evil to try to avoid their victims to do so in vain. They cannot escape their presence, and it is an atonement and a source of remorse until they atone for the wrongs they have done. Conversely, kindness and goodwill surrounds the spirit of an upright person. Even on earth, there's no greater torment for a bad person than the presence of his or her victims, whom they try to avoid at all costs. What happens when the illusions of passions dissipate and they understand the wrongs they have done? When they see their secret actions brought to light and the hypocrisy unmasked? When they realize that they cannot hide from those they have wronged, while the soul of the wicked is prey to shame, regret, and remorse, the soul of the virtuous enjoys perfect peace.
Okay.
Wow.
Yes. In English, please, right? So let's go.
Wow.
So first, spirits are unable to hide their thoughts and acts of their lives from each other. Let's understand how this works. And actually, thanks, Luis, for the study of No Solar on Tuesday. So it reminds us how those things work in the spiritual world. More evolved spirits can see what's going on with less evolved spirits, can understand better what's happening to them, but to a certain degree. And I mentioned No Solar because we just studied on Tuesday the chapter where Andrea Luis goes with Narcisa to rest, to help and assist a lady that comes to the door of No Solar, filled with black dots. And when Narcisa takes Andrea Luis there, she asks him, "Do you see all the black dots?" And Andrea Luis doesn't see anything. She sees the black dots, but she doesn't know what they mean. And then they go ask for a superior spirit there that takes care of the regeneration chambers in No Solar, and he comes and tells them that the black dots represents each child that she murdered, in a sense, because she was performing abortions. So spirits can see, yes, but not all of them, and depends on their degree of evolution. But what we cannot do is hide from spirits that can read us. That we cannot do. We can hide from spirits that are at the same level of us. Some of them, not all of them, because that's how the leaders of the lower zones dominate spirits and control them by being able to read their thoughts and understanding what their imperfections, and prey on their imperfections and dominate them. So this is very difficult to cover in all senses. What we have to understand is more evolved spirits, the spirits that work on the assistance of less evolved spirits, can read them fully read them, mostly, if they have this ability and knowledge. And we see throughout the André Luiz collection how the mentors that guide André Luiz through the books, they reveal to him things that he cannot see in incarnate spirits and discarnate
Ele resolveu
spirits.
ligar nesse aqui, sapato.
So, sorry. So then Kardec talks a little bit about how it goes with guilt and how long it lasts and how does it work. And one thing that is very important here is when Kardec says, when we are in the spirit world, our entire past is revealed and the good and bad that we did is known. It's not revealed to us, okay? We don't see the spirits telling us that is revealed to us. What Kardec this is Kardec saying here, and it's his understanding that when we go back to the spiritual world, we can see our whole past. We actually can see our last incarnation, and we can have glimpses of previous incarnations according to our necessities. So if something that we did on 3 incarnations ago is helpful for us that first, we can deal with the remembrance, and second, it can help us move forward, then it will be revealed in a sense that we will be able to remember. But again, as we said many times in our studies, if we can barely deal with the mistakes we made in our present life, if we start seeing everything that we have done wrong previously, it will be too much. We will be overwhelmed, and in the end, it will help us nothing. It will cause us to regress in a sense. We never regress, but regress to a state of suffering that we wouldn't be able to deal with. That's why the divine law allows us to remember what is needed for us to move forward and not everything. But we know that the spirits that we cause harm are connected to us. And until we overcome the mistakes we make, and we make the repair either with directly with the spirits that we have hurt, or we overcome the imperfections and we are able to forgive ourselves, forgive them, move forward, work to make the repair. If we cannot make the repair with the spirit we harm with someone else, they will still be present in our lives. But remember the phrase from the Apostle Paul, love covers a multitude of sins, meaning through love we evolve, and through love we can repair our mistakes and our imperfections. We can correct them. Most of us don't know how to do it, and that's why we're still here struggling to learn. But until we repair the mistakes, we cannot evolve. And this is not something related to those that we have harmed. Those that we have harmed can move on by themselves independently of us. If they are able to learn from the pain, move forward, be able to forgive and move forward, we may stay behind with our own atonement and our own struggle. So one thing doesn't depend directly on the other. That's very important always to remember, that our evolution, we don't have to repair our mistakes individually to those that we have caused harm, maybe because some of them don't really need us to repair. But we need to repair the mistakes for ourselves, for our evolvement, for our evolution. Without repairing, without atoning for it, we are not going to be able to progress. Okay, it's a complex subject here, the influence of spirits in and how can we hide our thoughts or not. Yes, Dani.
So for the ostensive mediums here, when they go back to the spiritual world, their perception, like the example you gave of André Luiz and that woman, that one could see the black dots, the other not. So this kind of perception, an ostensive medium that lived here could perceive these kind of things, or we sort of equalize when we go back?
Mediumship is an attribute of the physical body, right?
Physical body, because it's,
yeah.
Okay. But,
So
this sensibility that maybe was developed or practiced, or acknowledgement of seeing things that maybe other people don't see, does go back and it equalizes, or it's still there?
No, the sensibility that you acquire, the knowledge that you acquire stays with you. We never lose anything that we learn. So when we go back to the spiritual world, all of that belongs to the eternal spirit, you have it with you. What you won't have is the mediumship that belongs to the physical body. Okay, but yes, if you have developed the ability, the sensitivity of sensing things in the spiritual world, you will carry that with you, and you'll be able to use that abilities in the spiritual world, not in the same sense that you were using here for mediumship, because that's not how it will work in the spiritual world. There is mediumship in the spiritual world also. We know from André Luiz books, but it's a different kind of mediumship that we have not much understanding of it. But there is, because there are different planes of existence in the spiritual world. So there are mediums in the spiritual world, but doesn't mean that you are a medium here, you go back to the spiritual world, you'll be a medium in the spiritual world, because the mediumship here is a physical component of your physical body. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah, because my question is more like a medium that might be working or practicing and learning more might be different than a person who has no mediumship and has no knowledgement or development in terms of understanding more what you see or what you perceive beyond the physicality, right? So that stays.
Yes, definitely, because it's your achievements, your personal, the spirit's achievement, right? So of course, everything that you learn intellectually and morally stays with you back in the spiritual world.
Yeah, but I ask because since we will have the body no more, that might not play a difference as it plays here. That's the question, you know, because then a medium here is perceiving things that relates more to the spiritual world or spiritual reality of a person or a situation or whatever it is. But then there, the body is not there anymore. So someone who was not a medium, so it's not different anymore, you know, because then we are all spirits again.
Yes.
Go ahead.
The ability of the spirits to have those higher perceptions in the spiritual world is an attribute of moral qualities, of moral involvement, regardless of having or not having mediumistic abilities while incarnate. So if the medium use the mediumship as an instrument to elevate oneself morally, it may have some perception that other less evolved spirits cannot see. But you're right, once you go back to the spiritual world, pretty much we level the plane in terms of ability to see things of the spiritual world. And then it becomes really an attribute of our moral values that will determine if our ability to perceive things that others may not be able to. It's no longer related to mediumship. Now, we want to not deny that the mediumship is a wonderful instrument to help us to elevate ourselves morally if properly used.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Anything else?
Yes, I'd just like to make a comment. Okay, you all know that I'm in self-help 12-step programs, and quite interesting. Yesterday I was in one, and the step is basically 12-step, but step 9 in specific tells that you have to make direct amends for the people you did wrong. Isn't that interesting? The step 9 in self-help suggests people to make repairs to all these people that are wrong. Quite fascinating, no? And remember that the 12 steps are spiritual programs. And it's right here in the Spirit's book. Isn't that something? Wow.
Yeah, the truth is everywhere, right, Paco? It's the different forms
well,
and different.
listen. It's, this is from 1930 and this is from 1850. So, wow. It's quite fascinating.
But the thing is, what I heard sometimes, Paco, is the problem on the 9th step. You have to make amends with those that you hurt, but actually you have to make amends with yourself, because sometimes you hurt someone and the person moved on. They accepted, they forgave you, they moved on. So you try to make amends with someone that doesn't need amends, and that's what we study here to try to understand that it's personal. It's you with yourself. Of course, you should look for and try to make amends if you can, but sometimes either the person doesn't want to, and that's their problem. It's not yours as long as you do it. Or the person doesn't need it. And again, it's your problem, it's not theirs.
It is your problem, yeah. And like you said, the first person you have to make amends to is probably yourself.
Yeah. You have to overcome the imperfection, right? Correct yourself. Exactly. That's the only way to move forward.
Fascinating.
Okay.
João.
Yes. Go ahead, Renato.
Just try to understand something that you mentioned. You said that the more elevated spirit can see our faults and everything because of his morally more developed, right?
Yes, evolved.
But you also mentioned that in lower zones or whatever, you have those spirits that they also can see, the spirits that are there, their faults, and that's how they manipulate or control them, right?
Yes.
So, first question, the spirits that rule the lower zones, or whatever you want to call it, in theory, they are less evolved in terms of morals, morally speaking, than the ones that don't rule. But however, they are intellectually more advanced. That's how they can do what they do. So in the lower zone, the morally more evolved does not apply in order to see the other spirit's faults, right?
No, the moral evolvement is what, the lack of moral evolvement is what keeps the spirits in the lower zones, okay? Now, it's to measure degrees of moral evolvement amongst spirits in the lower zones is kind of a pointless discussion here. They are in the lower zones, so they don't have the ability to be assisted in a place like Nosso Lar or in the transitory houses of assistance because of their lack of moral evolvement plus acceptance of their inferiority. That's why they find themselves in the lower zones. Now, you add that with, you were right on the other side, the spirits that dominate the lower zones are intellectually evolved. Yes, more evolved than those around them. That's how they control them. So the ability of them reading the minds or the thoughts of the other spirits there, it's just a law of affinity. So if you have inferior thoughts here on earth, we always say, if you have inferior thoughts, you have spirits that are going to associate with you, that have the same inferior tendencies, that wants to use you to fulfill their needs. So how the same applies in the lower zones. So the spirits that are the leaders of the lower zones, they associate themselves with the other less evolved spirits through their inferior thoughts and tendencies, but they have the knowledge and ability through their intellectual evolvement to know how to use it to control them. And the ones that are controlled don't know that, don't know how to defend themselves against these leaders of the lower zone. So it works like a, not a very perfect comparison, but let's say a gang here, right? The leaders of the gang dominates the others through violence, through willpower, and those that belong to the gang, they cannot leave because they feel getting hurt, they don't know how to leave. So in a sense, it's more something of the same, let's say. But the difference is in the lower zones, the spirits that finally reach a point of sincerely asking for help and regretting what they have done are immediately assisted. Assistance is always there for the spirits that are ready to be assisted, right? Like the organizations we have here, the AA meetings that Paco mentioned, the help for those drug addicts. If they really want to be helped, there is help all around. But many of them do not want to be helped. They don't recognize that they are addicted or they have problems. So until they recognize, it's no help will be useful to them.
So
Okay.
can one assume that, I mean, not like in like very detail, but like generally speaking, the difference between a higher order spirit or evolved spirit and those spirits that rule the lower zones, that they are pretty much intellectually speaking at the same level. What separates them is the moral side.
What separates them is the moral side, absolutely. Intellectually, we cannot say, because some of these spirits in the lower zones are very, very intellectually evolved, maybe even more than some spirits that are more evolved morally. And that's why when we talk about mediumistic meeting, and you are part of it, we are not going to win an argument with a spirit that has a lot of knowledge, because we sometimes have less knowledge than them. We are only going to be able to succeed in the discussion through the moral aspect, right? Not through the intellectual aspect, because intellectual abilities, we may find spirits in the lower zones that are much more evolved intellectually than we are. Elmo, you want to add something? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, in the spiritual world, we need to make an assumption that generally a well-developed, a morally well-developed spirit, it's also intellectually well-developed. If that's not hold true while incarnate, meaning that a spirit that is highly evolved intellectually and morally may incarnate and not being able to express all the intellectual abilities, but will bring all the moral qualities, because you always bring the moral quality. That's not true in the spiritual world. So let's think together here. We say that intellectual progress is much easier than the moral progress, right? So it tells us that if a spirit have acquired great moral progress, it's because it had also acquired great intellectual progress, since the intellectual progress is much easier than the intellectual one, the moral one. So I would argue that the highly developed moral spirits in the spiritual world, they are also highly evolved intellectually. And yes, what you would differentiate spirits in the highest spheres and in the lower spheres is primarily the moral aspect. But I would argue that very intellectual spirits in the lower zone are still less evolved, even intellectually, than the high spirits in the high spheres. Because also there is a symbiotic relationship between the two wings. One propels the other forward. As we continue to move intellectually, it propels us to move also morally. We can see that in our world right now. As we progress intellectually and have all this technology available, it also propels us to move intellectually forward, as you have to review moral, ethical uses of this technology. That is a way to push us up on morally as well. So the main difference will be the moral side. But I will argue that even intellectually, the higher evolved spirits morally are also more evolved intellectually.
Okay. Renato, we're good?
Yeah, I'm good, but I'm gonna need to chew on those.
Food for thought.
That's not food. That's
Well, it's very simple. Which one is easier, the moral or the intellectual?
intellectual.
Right. So if the intellectual is easy, and you look at spirit who have achieved tremendous amount of moral, that tells us that it also had gathered intellectual as well. Why would anyone do the hard part first and not the easy one, right?
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. And you can see that spirits that we read on the, let's say, all the spirits that are André Luiz teachers in the spiritual world, they can see they're not only morally evolved, they're also intellectually extremely evolved as well. We can see here on Earth, we can see, let's say, Divaldo Pereira Franco. I mean, intellectually, it's extremely evolved as well. We can see on Francisco Cândido Xavier that had basically no formal education. His intellectually was always expressed only by the way he spoke. That even without formal education, no warming up school batches, we can tell that he is extremely morally evolved. Otherwise, he could not even produce some of the books that he produced if he didn't have those intellectual abilities already with him.
Okay.
So if you go to the gang members, as John's used over here, and yes, they are definitely intellectually better prepared to manipulate, to push on, to be a bully of other gang members. But if you compare that level, intellectual ability, or other individuals outside of that, individuals with college degrees and kind of things, no, they're not going to be more evolved and more intellectually evolved than those who have a higher degree of education. If they were so intellectually evolved, perhaps they would not even be a part of a gang. But yes, they are more evolved than others gang members.
Intellectually.
Thank you.
Yes. Thanks. Okay, Paco, next. You're on mute, Paco. You're on mute, Paco.
Okay. Now, does the memory of the faults the soul committed when imperfect disturb its happiness even after it reaches purity? No, because it has redeemed its faults and successfully passed through the trials it had endured for that purpose.
Okay, short one, but important one for us to understand here our process of evolution, right? And it relates directly to what I just said about remembering past lives. Once
Exactly.
once you reach perfection, it means that you overcome all your imperfections. You are overcome all your mistakes, and you have the ability to look back at yourself without feeling any disturbance, because you learn from it. You don't no longer carry guilt because you repair everything. You no longer have regrets because you repaired all mistakes you made, and you reach a state of that you fully understand your process of evolution and all the mistakes made on the path that do no longer disturbs you. And again, as we don't need to reach perfection. As we evolve and we become more ready to deal with our imperfections, we will start accessing our mistakes of the past, because we are able to deal with them and to repair them. So once we overcome them, there is no guilty, there is nothing left there, no sense of disturbance in any sense.
Very good. Yeah.
Okay.
That's okay. Do the trials a soul must experience in the future to complete its purification cause a painful apprehension that hampers its current happiness? Yes, for a soul that is still tainted by imperfection, it can only enjoy perfect happiness when it has become quite pure. For souls that have reached a certain degree of progress, the thought of the trials they still have to experience causes no pain whatsoever. When the soul arrives at a certain degree of purification, it obtains a taste of happiness. A feeling of sweet satisfaction overwhelms it, and is happy in all that it sees and all that surrounds it. As the veil shrouding the mysteries of creation is partially raised, the soul begins to perceive divine perfection in its entire splendor.
Okay. So are we suffering because of the challenges that we face? We know we have to face ahead of us. Not necessarily, right? The more we understand our limitations and our present situation, we we know that we have a road ahead. We know that we are going to have struggles, but we shouldn't be suffering in anticipation, because that doesn't help us. So if we are imperfect and we are suffering because we have to repair the mistakes we know we made, that is the cause that prevents us from being happy. But we just have to look at our present incarnation, all the struggles that we go through, and some consequences of mistakes we made in the present existence that makes us suffer, makes us go through trials, to challenges in this present incarnation, and prevent us from being fully happiness or achieve the relative happiness that is allowed in this incarnation. But as we evolve and we are acquiring a sense, a certain degree of purification, as they say here, we obtain a taste of happiness that is reserved to the more evolved spirits. The spirits described here as a feeling of sweet satisfaction that overwhelms it. And it's happy in all that it sees and all that surrounds it. The soul begins to perceive divine perfection in its entire splendor. And I think that's a very good description of something that we still cannot fully understand or even grasp, but that's a poetic way of the spirits to explain to us in a language that we can understand, right? I actually, for those, yes, go ahead, Pa.
So that, okay, I'm confused. So if you have reached a certain level of progress, but you're still tainted by imperfection, then the future is kind of overwhelming. But as soon as you start progressing and progressing, even if you're not at the state of perfection, you see a glimpse of that bliss. Am I correct? Am I understanding this correctly?
Yes.
Because it says, yes, for a soul that is tainted by imperfection, yes, you're going to have painful apprehension. But once you have reached a degree of, progress, doesn't mean perfect, then you get a glimpse of that bliss. Did I understand this correctly?
Yes, exactly what you said. The spirits that are that reach a certain level of evolution have the ability to have a glimpse of the happiness that awaits us and gives them joy of the opportunity of going in that direction. When you are still tainted by imperfection, as they say here, you sometimes are too distracted with your current issues and current struggles that you cannot even see how to achieve relative happiness that was what we can achieve during the incarnation, as the spirits tell us. Yes, Danny.
I'm a little lost. Is this question related to spirits who are back or here, or both?
Both. Yeah. Spirits, more evolved spirits, when they are incarnated, they may lose momentarily sometimes that sense of understanding happiness. And you hear in the stories of Mother Teresa and of Chico Xavier moments of struggle, moments of unhappiness, in a sense, that they went through their physical lives, right? Related to the suffering they saw around and their loneliness in the case of Mother Teresa. But they have even in the moments they are struggling, they have the understanding of the bigger picture, right? Of us as eternal souls. When you are back in the spiritual world, it's even easier for more evolved spirits. Then they have the ability to fully reach and understand this perspective of happiness. But sometimes the physical body constrains a little bit this ability in more evolved spirits. But we're talking about both. Spirits back in the spiritual world, they are too concerned with their own issues and their own problems, their own imperfections. Also, they cannot grasp the possibility of happiness. And you see spirits that think, and we discussed this last week, that their suffering in the spiritual world is eternal. And sometimes only a new incarnation can release them from that suffering that they are going through the spiritual world. So those type of spirits cannot see anything of this happiness or relative happiness that they can achieve. We talked a little bit about trials and atonements here, and I just read a very good chapter of a book by Joana de Angelis. The book is called Plenitude by Divaldo Franco and Joana de Angelis. It's available in English. And chapter 3 talks about trials and atonements, and it's one of the best descriptions of trials and atonements that I read in Spiritism. Okay, so the book is called Plenitude, and it's chapter 3 for those that may have it at home. It's a new book that was just published, actually. Go ahead, Paco.
Okay, we're talking 980? Yeah.
980, yeah.
Yeah. It's the sympathetic link that unites spirits of the same order a source of happiness for them. The union of spirits who sympathize with the love of goodness is one of the greatest joys because they have no fear of seeing that union disturbed by selfishness. In the spiritual world, they form families inspired by the same sentiment, as they group into categories and experience joy in being together. This union constitutes the happiness of those worlds. The pure and sincere affection that elevated spirits feel, and of which they are the object, is a source of happiness because there are neither false friends nor hypocrites among them. People enjoy the first taste of happiness on earth when they meet others with whom they can enter into a pure and virtuous union. In purer existences, this happiness becomes indescribable and limitless because they only meet sympathetic souls who are not saddened by selfishness. All is love in nature. Selfishness kills. That's true. I love that. I love that.
That's Kardec. So when we talk and when we discuss the spiritual world, we always discuss that spirits are united by the same vibrations, right? So you find yourself in the spiritual world where your mind takes you, where your vibration level takes you. So you are surrounded by spirits that vibrate in the same level as you do. So if you think of the union of spirits, of elevated spirits, spirits with the love of goodness, they can only be happy with a happiness that we cannot understand. They form families or they form groups in the spiritual world and experience joy in being together. But the joy that they experience in being together is the ability to help others in constant union and constant forgot the word, merger of thoughts in a way. So it's very important for us to understand here that this talks about the spiritual world. Now, we're here on earth, when we are in a group of people, like-minded spirits, let's say, like-minded people, that we are surrounded by people that share the same interests, that share the same things that we are doing, we experience joy, we experience happiness. We look for this here in the physical world. So in this imperfect world that our unions are affected by selfishness, by jealousy, by all other things, we still can find happiness in finding like-minded spirits. We can only imagine that in the spiritual world, as more evolved spirits, when we overcome the inferior tendencies, the joy that it must be of working together. And we see a little bit this when going back to the very basic, which is Nosso Lar. You read about André Luiz happiness in finding things that work in Nosso Lar, and in how he can be of use, and how the workers of Nosso Lar, the workers that are the directors of the places that he goes there, they are always helpful, happy, and interested in working for the good. So and spirits that do not belong there cannot share the same thoughts, are removed in a sense. They cannot stay there. And if you, André Luiz, at a point in the book, he starts complaining when his mother finally meets him. He starts complaining to her that everything is bad, that his life is miserable. And then she tells him directly, if you continue like this, you cannot continue here. You need to change your mind thoughts. You need to change your mindset. So, you have to find yourself in the spiritual world, especially, you have to find yourself surrounded by spirits that think like you do. And that's how you are going to be united in this happiness that they describe here. Okay, questions?
So, John, since our thoughts, they pretty much they oscillate. So, will we find ourselves with our lower thoughts? Because for example, someone might be think about charity and doing good stuff, but also acting crazy. But it's not like crazy all the time, not doing good all the time. So where are you gonna find yourself? Like
what
us?
Is the predominant? What's the predominant?
It's always the predominant.
Yeah, we are imperfect spirits, so we are not expected to be behaving like angels, like evolved spirits. We have ups and downs in our lives. Now, where you stay longer, in the ups or the downs, where you find balance, where you find equilibrium, that's where you find yourself in the spiritual world. Of course, being imperfect, we are still making mistakes, and we are still connecting to inferior-minded, less evolved-minded spirits. But if these connections are temporary and we do not fixate on them, then we are able to most of the time have more evolved thoughts. We are going to find ourselves in a better place. Yes. So again, look at the predominance of your thoughts and behavior, and that's where you are going to find yourself.
Thank you.
Okay. So 7:30, we have to stop here.
Yeah.
We finish the last two questions in next week, and then we start with the temporary atonements, and we are going to talk more about trials and atonements, and I'll bring that chapter for us all that I just mentioned. So in terms of activities for this long weekend, On Saturday, we have a talk by Marcia Trajano, who is one of the founders of the Christian Spiritist community of Atlanta, and she's a board member of the US Spiritist Federation. She's going to talk of meaningful conversations with your emotional self, okay? Again, on the United States Spiritist Federation Facebook and YouTube page. This Sunday is the first Sunday of the month, so we are going to be studying in the greater world. And I believe we are on chapter 12 or 13, forgot, so this at 11. We are not going to have our Q&A because we already did that last week. And in 3 weeks' time, we are going to have the 22nd Spiritist Week of the Tri-State. And I'll give you more information closer. We're going to have different lectures every day. Some of them will be only in Portuguese. Some of them will be in Portuguese with translation, and some of them will be in English. I'll give you the whole details, okay? So Carol, can you do our final prayer?
Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we are grateful for the opportunity this evening to be together to study the Spirit's book and to have a greater understanding and awareness of the future joys and sorrows that may be ahead of us. We hope that we can be of great service and great mindset so that we can bring forth a greater vibration that allows us to link more readily and more effectively. We are truly grateful for what we have learned this evening. May we give great thanks to our spiritual benefactors, the good spirits, the helpers, the healers, the guides, and the spiritual protectors who are with us as we advance and go forward in our studies. We are grateful for their help, and may we do our part to be of great service and benefit as well. As we close this portion of the meeting this evening, may we receive the love and light of Christ within. May we evolve to do greater works, to be of service, to be more mindful, to be more compassionate, and to listen with a deepening in our hearts. We know there are many challenges, but we know that as we evolve, there will be relative happiness in a greater way. As we go to the spirit world, we will have an understanding of this and be able to make our amends as necessary. We close now and ask for protection, safety, inner peace, and guidance as we return to family, friends, loved ones, and co-workers. May we spread our joy within our hearts to others who are in need at this time. We ask for the help of spirits who may be suffering at this time. Grant us healing, abiding courage, faith, and goodwill. We close now and ask to continue to be beacons of light. We go forth now in peace, so be it.